Hello everybody and welcome. My name is Alison Pello and today we're talking to the lovely Carol Greaves, who's going to tell us about apprenticeships. As I just confessed to Carol, the perception might be from me and from many that apprenticeships are just for car mechanics and for and hairdressers, but this seems not to be the case. And in fact, I was on a careers talk just last night for my daughter, who is currently 17, and my God, there's some absolutely amazing apprenticeships out there. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Carol, who will introduce herself, and I hope you all enjoy the call today.
Thanks, Alison. Okay, hi everybody. Before I share my screen, thanks for joining. I'll just give you a little introduction into who I am and what I do. So I work for the Apprenticeship and Skills Hub, which is a funded project set up through Hampshire County Council and the European Social Fund to support SMEs with completely free and impartial advice around apprenticeships and skills training options. So the point of the hub is to actually get involved with yourselves as small to medium-sized businesses, help you guys to actually identify the needs within the business. So I don't know if everyone's muted. Just check everyone.
I'm just going through and muting them if they're not.
Thank you. So basically what we do is I'll have a chat with you over Teams, face-to-face, just to have a look at what the need is within your business, what you're looking to do, what skills gaps you're looking to fill, be that through taking on a new staff member through new employment or upskilling an existing member of staff. And I can help you to identify the most relevant apprenticeship training standard that's available that would sit within that job role. Once we do that, we help you out and support you with all of the setup process, which I'll go through in a little bit more detail when I go through the presentation. But we help you with funding, give you advice around incentive claims, that kind of stuff. And then we'll point you in the right direction of the most relevant training provider who can support you with delivery of the actual apprenticeship training. Now, at that point, if it's not suitable to go through an apprenticeship program, we can actually have a look at different skills opportunities that are out there. There's lots of FE colleges and independent training providers who are running other courses, things like traineeships, T-levels. Obviously the Kickstart scheme was in place, but that's ending at the end of this month. But again, if anybody's got any Kickstarters in place, I can help you with actually developing those Kickstarters through into the business and potentially look at taking them on as an apprentice. So I've put all of my contact details in the chat. So if anybody wants to catch up later, please just drop me an email. But without further ado, I'm going to try and share my screen. I'm not the best on Zoom, but
you'll be grand. You'll be grand. Don't worry, Carol. I've seen Carol in action, and I just thought she was so wonderful. I'd like her to come onto a People Vision one. Don't worry. If it goes wrong, as long as you haven't got an embarrassing email to share, we don't mind.
I've minimised that screen.
Yeah. That doesn't mean to say it won't pop up. You've got to close it.
So I'm just going to share my screen, and then what we'll do at the end of the session, if anyone's got any questions and answers, we can go through there if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, brilliant. So the chat is there, everybody. So as Sharon said, she's put Carol said, she's put her details in there. But if you do have specific questions, don't think just if you're not in Hampshire that this won't be applicable to you, because I know Carol's all about helping the wider good as well.
Yeah, so just to go on that note from Alison, obviously the hub I work for is supporting Surrey-based employers, Surrey and North Hampshire-based employers, but it doesn't matter where you are. If you're there and it's about apprenticeships or skills training options, just give me a shout. I'm happy to help you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay. So just to go through some basics, I know some of you probably already do employ apprentices, but just to give you a little bit of an overview. So the basics around apprenticeships, it's a productive and an effective way to grow talent and develop a motivated, skilled and qualified workforce. An apprenticeship combines hands-on work with the opportunity to train and obtain qualifications. And it's a job. It's a real job. A lot of people don't necessarily see an apprenticeship as a job. They just think it's additional training or it's an alternative to college. So if somebody's not going to college, they'll be doing an apprenticeship. But what does that involve? So it is a real job. It's an opportunity where an individual can learn, gain experience and qualifications, and obviously they get paid. Apprentices can be new or current employees. You could all be apprentices if you wanted to be. You can be a company director and do an apprenticeship. It makes no difference. Apprentices must have a contract of employment. They are entitled to holiday leave, paid holiday leave, and you must pay them at least the minimum wage for an apprentice. And apprenticeships can last anything between 1 and 7 years, depending on the level and the subject that best matches the business. So in a nutshell, it's a real job. So you have a contract of employment, you pay them a salary, and you pass on your valuable skills and knowledge and experience onto that apprentice. What benefits are there for you as an employer? Well, basically, programs can be sector focused and are funded by the government. So just to give you a little bit of background, up until about 7 years ago, an apprenticeship program was exactly that. It was a program, and it was made up of various units, or hundreds of units in some cases, where we could bespokely build an apprenticeship program around the needs of the business, and we could pull in all of those various units to actually put together a dedicated apprenticeship program. The government identified some valuable needs within apprenticeships to change, and they started setting up what they called trailblazer groups. So these were groups of experts within the industry, and all in industry sectors. And between them, they put together specific apprenticeship standards, which is now the case moving forward. There's currently 711 approved apprenticeship standards out there, and they range from anything from puppet maker to business administration to gas safe engineers to plumbers, to officer of the deck. That's one I noticed yesterday, which is quite interesting. Right the way through to degree level apprenticeships now. And I think we had a quick conversation earlier. There's actually a level 7 solicitor degree apprenticeship out there. So there's plenty out there. Current employers have an opportunity to gain experience in training and mentoring. So as an employer, if you haven't got much experience in mentoring or training your staff, by putting somebody through an apprenticeship program, you can gain some really valuable experience from that. And you've also got the support of a training provider who is delivering the apprenticeship training. You get support with the design of a program to suit both the needs of your business and the needs of the trainee. So it's not just a case of let's find one person and then let's look at a standard and let's just match it and go with it. We take into careful consideration the needs of your business, what you're looking to gain from it long term. This is not just about the next 15 or 18 months when somebody's on an apprenticeship program, but let's look at the benefits long term and how by training that person through an apprenticeship, it can not just support them in their career opportunity and their career growth, but it can actually support your business growth as well. Benefits to you as well, they increase capacity and the productivity within your teams because they're getting solid and detailed training. You get to develop a really loyal and talented workforce. So apprenticeships now are really well recognised out there across the UK and in some places worldwide. And within those apprenticeship programs, as I mentioned earlier, you get qualified, you get recognised qualifications. In some cases, you get worldwide recognised qualifications. So they're really supporting developing those individuals. It helps to tackle youth unemployment as well. So to be an apprentice, you can be any age whatsoever now. There's no cut-off, but apprenticeships do really support that youth unemployment element. And if you take somebody in who's younger, by doing an apprenticeship, you're able to mold them to, you know, your way of thinking, your way of working. And you get to know and work with young people prior to recruiting. So that's on a young person's point of view, but also because the age groups have gone up so much now, and there's no age restriction, it gives you a bit more corporate responsibility, and you can actually get more involved with different age groups in your communities of those people who are looking to take on new positions. So as an employer, what's involved? So An apprentice has to work alongside experienced staff on a day-to-day basis. There has to be somebody in the workplace that can actually teach them how to do the job that you want them to do. Now, you don't have to have somebody who's going to babysit, but it's just literally somebody who's going to mentor and support that person and show them just basically, these are the tools that we use to do this job. This is how we do this job. This is why we need you to do it this way. And then leave them to it, but just be there to answer any questions and support them on an ongoing basis. The apprentice must be allocated a mentor or supervisor to support their learning and training within the workplace. So again, we're not babysitting the apprentice. It's your choice who you take on. But if you take somebody on who's much younger, somebody who's coming from school, they're going to probably need a bit more mentoring and support than somebody who's come from another career background that's coming in to change obviously direction, but somebody who's already got some experience of working in a business environment. You have to give them time for training or study during their working week. So how it works is you employ an apprentice. Now, if they're 18 or under, they cannot work more than 40 hours a week. And any apprentice, no matter what age they are, cannot work less than 30 hours a week. If you have somebody who is part-time, for instance, if there are reasons, valid reasons for that, they can only work part-time because of childcare issues. And say, for instance, they can only work 25 hours a week, we can actually go through and apply with training providers to extend the length of a training program, but there has to be a valid reason. But what we have to take into account is all of the training around an apprenticeship program takes place in the workplace, Monday to Friday, or for whatever days they're contracted to work with you. And you as the employer have to allow 20% of the working week for that individual for off-the-job training. Now, what that means is for literally a day a week, you have to still pay them and they mustn't make up the time on it, but they have to down tools on their normal day-to-day job role and they have to focus on the training within their apprenticeship standard. So that could be, they could be sitting on a screen all day doing virtual training with their training provider. They might come out of the business and go a 10-day release at a university or a further education college or a training provider's workplace to do their training. But we have to be seen to be giving them 20% of their working week for off-the-job training. They have to have a contract of employment for the duration of the apprenticeship, and they have to be paid at least the minimum wage, which I'll get to in a second. The contract of employment, it's entirely up to you. In past days, they used to just put them on a fixed term contract for the duration of the apprenticeship. But contracts are obviously flexible nowadays. And as long as the minimum contract they have is for the length of the apprenticeship program, at the end of the program, when they finished, you can make that decision. Does the need of the business require you to keep that person on? Do you still have obviously funds in the payroll, etc.? So you would then just extend their contract or give them a normal long-term rolling contract. You might decide business has changed slightly, so you're not able to keep them on long term, but what you have done is you've given somebody a really good opportunity to gain some really valid experience within your business environment, and they've now got a new qualification that will support them to go further. Or that apprentice might decide, actually, you know, I've been given a great opportunity, but now it's time for me to move on. Or they might decide, you know what, I've loved doing what I've done. For instance, they might have done business admin level 3. You're giving them a little bit more responsibility, and they might say to you, look, you know, if I'm staying on, can I progress? Can I go on to a level 4, level 5? So there's lots of opportunities within them, but you don't have to keep an apprentice on at the end of the program. But obviously you've committed all of that time, all of your experience, you've passed on all of that knowledge. Do you really want to let somebody go that's actually got all of that knowledge within their head and they've been really good to the business? Apprentice rates of pay, don't all fall off your seats here. They're just about to increase in April. For an apprentice in their first year of program, there's a minimum wage. which you cannot pay below, and that's actually going up to £4.81 an hour. Let's not forget that 1p. I don't know why the 481 is there. It's absolutely shocking. However, there's a reason for it, because there's a cost implication behind apprenticeships, and in some of the standards it's quite a hefty cost, and that's covered a lot of the time by the government, which I'll get to shortly, but it's just a guideline. Now, the minimum wage for apprentices tends to be paid more for very junior roles, school leavers, youngsters with no experience whatsoever, going into maybe a care environment or a nursery environment. But you can pay whatever you feel is right above that £4.81 an hour. I've got a lot of employers I support who actually start their apprentices off on the minimum living wage for their age group, which is a great start. I've got other employers who will just bring them straight in on I'm going to start them on 20 grand a year or a bit more. It's entirely up to you. It depends on what your budget allows, and what you see as fit for that particular job role and the person coming in. Different levels of apprenticeships. So they start at a level 2, which is an intermediate. Now, level 2 is the equivalent to GCSEs. So it's the equivalent to like 4 GCSEs, grade A to C or grade 4 to 9 in new words. An advanced apprenticeship program is a level 3. That's the equivalent to A levels. And then you go up to the higher degrees, the 4, 5, 6s and 7s, which are foundation degrees and above, and then your 6 and 7s, which are the equivalent to your bachelor's and master's degree. And the great thing here is anyone can start as an apprentice. You can start as a level 2, you can start as a level 3, and you can actually work your way right the way through now to a master's degree qualification. The bonus here with doing an apprenticeship, especially if you're doing it at degree level, is there's no cost to the applicant to do that. Hopefully there'll be no cost to the employer, to yourselves, except for paying a salary. And I'll run through the funding side of things in a second for you. But just to give you an example, there's a level 7 solicitor's apprenticeship available, which I think is 6 years, 5 or 6 years.
Just repeat that, because you went wonky with the sound.
Oh, did I?
That last bit.
So the level 7 solicitors apprenticeship program, I think it's about 6 years, in 5 or 6 years, but that costs £25,000, that particular program. That £25,000 will be funded for you as an employer through the government. Sometimes the government will ask you to pay 5% of that, but there's ways around it where we can actually make sure that there's no cost to you as an employer at all. So if you look at it, if somebody's doing an apprenticeship program, it's £25,000 worth of training there, which is a lot of money. They're coming out with a degree bonus, but they're not coming out with any student debt, and they're coming out with work experience, and they've been earning a salary all the way along. So it's kind of like a win-win situation. There's no negatives behind it, if that's the right thing to say. So how does an apprenticeship work?
Hang on, sorry, Carol, just so if somebody wants to do, it's really interesting that you just said, so someone, business owners or anyone could do a degree, which might be really appealing. So, but how long is that likely to take to get to that level, what, 6 or 7 that you just said?
It depends. It actually depends on the program. So they all come along with different time scales. I'm just going to load. This is me not being organised here. I'm just going to load my programs, but they vary. So an apprenticeship can be anything from 18 months up to 5 years. Let me just put this level 7 solicitor in.
Yeah. We have a lot of people from law firms, interestingly enough, on the call today.
We do.
Yeah, so it'd be great, actually, just while Carol's looking that up, if you could go into the chat, everyone, and just put what sort of industry you're working in or responsible for. And just as a quick aside, there is a question that says, so government pay a prescribed rate and then the employer can pay it, top it up. That, I mean, you can go to the detail, but that is essentially it, isn't it?
Yeah. So basically, the solicitor program, so that's a level 7, okay,
yeah.
So that's the equivalent to a bachelor's.
Yeah.
60 months, okay. 60. 60.
Oh, 60.
Okay. the cost of that program is £27,000.
Right.
And I'll get to the funding details in a minute. But if you think about that, if you've got somebody employed, you're paying them a salary. They're a solicitor in training, so to speak.
Yeah.
But they'll be doing that training through a university, because obviously it's a degree, so a university has to deliver it. And it'll either be through day release, or it will be through that. I know some degrees actually do like block release, where they can go and attend university for 6 months non-stop, and then they come back into the business to do their on-the-job training and finish off the rest of their module work. But they vary. You know, there's another level 6 program here, another that's 60 months, but like a level 4, 24 months. So it just depends on the program. But we can, when we get to the questions and answer session, we can have a little look at what kind of apprenticeship programs we'll be looking at, and I can have a look at the standards and tell you how long they are and the costs. So just to break down an apprenticeship program, how it works is, okay, so there's got to be a training provider to deliver the training for you, and they have to be an approved training provider. So once you've identified your apprentice, you've either taken somebody on who they're a brand new start, or there's somebody who's already in the business. Your role as the employer, as I mentioned earlier, is to train them to do the job you're paying them to do, basically. So you're going to give them the tools to do the job, the desk, the laptop, whatever. You're going to assign them a mentor or a supervisor. You're going to do your normal internal induction and training, and let them get on with doing the job they're doing. Alongside that, they're going to be signed up with their training provider. Now, their training provider will give them an online portfolio, okay? And they'll have a portfolio full of questions and answers and exercises they have to complete. And basically, it's all about them gaining and building an evidence-based portfolio on how they do their job, but taking into consideration all of the fundamentals around doing that job. I'm not even going to start to give examples about being a solicitor because I know nothing about it, but I'll give you an example. For instance, business administration. So we'll have someone who's coming in to do business administration. You'll teach them, right, okay, well, this is what you need to do to support me. These are the CRM systems you use. This is how you use it. This is how we answer the telephone. This is how we send our emails. And this is our filing system. So within their portfolio of works, one of their exercises could be, please give a detailed description of the CRM management system that you use, how you use that system, what information you keep in there, the importance of getting that information correct, and what are the implications if you don't follow the process. So they will just be sitting there on their 20% day, and they'll be updating their portfolio with work. Okay, so I use Evolutive, and I have to make sure that it's really important that I get all the correct information on the client. One of the key things is I have to make sure that I upload the client's company registration number. If I don't get this correct, the implications to the business could be passing on wrong information, that kind of stuff, blah, 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 blah. So their competency training is based around what they're doing in the job, but the trainer will actually come into play, and they will set them exercises to complete. They might have projects that they have to complete. They might have to give presentations. It just depends on the program itself and what's entailed in that particular program that they're completing. But for the competency training, they'll have a dedicated tutor or training who will attend regular meetings with them. So you as the employer will know who their tutor trainer is from the training provider. The training provider will arrange to come into the workplace every 6 to 8 weeks. And during that time, they'll probably be on site for about an hour, 2 hours max. They'll sit down with the apprentice. The apprentice will continue to gather the evidence and complete their competency portfolio. The trainer will actually look at their portfolio, they'll mark it. They'll then sit back and they'll observe that person in work. So they'll be looking at them, watching them, how they do it, why they're doing it, are they doing it correctly? And then they'll want to spend literally 10-15 minutes with their line manager mentor just to have a chat, just to see how things are going. And then they'll go away, and then they'll update all of their portfolio work, and they'll make sure that all of the activities that sit within the apprenticeship program are matched and are ticked off accordingly to make sure that the learning and the knowledge side of stuff is all being kept up.
I assume that can all be done remotely as well, where applicable, where appropriate.
Yeah, it depends now. So since we've had COVID, the majority of training providers are all going remote. Most of them are now. But even before COVID, all of their work was online, and different providers have different portals that they use. But a lot of providers now have portals where the employer can actually have access to it, so they can keep up to date with where the apprentice is going as well, and they can keep a track on everything. Like I've lost a page somewhere here, but never mind. So work-based training, competency training, and then obviously you've got day release training, or where they just have to down tools for like 20% and they do their online training. The online training or the day release is all about the fundamentals. So that's learning all about the health and safety aspects of in that work environment, focusing on any particular qualifications within that particular environment, all that kind of stuff. This continues for the whole duration of the apprenticeship program. Okay, now each standard is different, so there's an assessment plan built in with each standard, which you'll get to see once you decide on what program you're going to go with. But as they get towards the end of their apprenticeship, normally 3 months towards the end of their program, they move into what's called gateway, and this is when they start to prepare for their endpoint assessment. Now, some apprenticeship standards have exams, obviously, because especially for the solicitor program, in IT and digital programs, that there's vendor qualifications that they have to complete. But whatever happens, the apprentice will be informed and completely supported to prepare for their endpoint assessment. Now, this is where they go in front of an external verification board, and that board's responsibility is to ensure that the apprentice has gained all of the relevant skills and knowledge that sit within the approved apprenticeship standard. Okay, they've learned sufficiently, and they're actually capable of taking those skills forward and doing that job now without supervision and without doing an apprenticeship program. So the endpoint assessment, the endpoint assessors are already identified at the very beginning of the program. They have nothing to do with the training provider whatsoever. The external assessor will assess all of the work that's been completed. It could be a combination of a portfolio review. They might have a face-to-face professional discussion. They might be asked to go to the external verifications location. They might be sitting there with a board of people. They might have a multiple choice test to complete. They might have to do a presentation. It might be a project, whatever. Whatever it is, they'll be advised of what the requirement is to complete their endpoint assessment. Now, once that's all done, they'll be graded, and it'll be either a pass, a merit, or distinction. And the good thing now with the apprenticeship standards is the training provider can normally identify within the first 6 weeks if that apprentice is not likely to get through this standard. So you'll have no one who's 4 years in who's going to fail. They shouldn't fail anyway. And if they do fail, there's some real problems around the assessors, etc., all those other people that have been involved. Right, apprenticeship funding, this is the fun bit. So are we all SMEs on the call? Are there any bigger organisations? Does anybody on the call pay the apprenticeship levy?
Perhaps you could either unmute yourself or pop it in the chat. So is anyone paying the apprenticeship levy? Just explain what the levy is.
So I'll just explain. So the levy is, again, this was introduced about 5 or 6 years ago. So any organisation in the UK that has a payroll in excess of £3 million has to pay a percentage of their monthly payroll into an apprenticeship levy account. So what that means is, whether or not they take on apprentices, that money sits into an account that's managed by HMRC, and it can only be spent on apprenticeship training. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Heathrow, for instance, big organisation, they're bound to pay an apprenticeship levy. They employ apprentices, they train and upskill their own staff through apprenticeships. So they've got money going into their levy pot every month without fail, based on their monthly payroll. The government top that up every month as well. I think it's by 10%, I think it is. And they have to spend that money on apprenticeship training. If they don't spend it within 23 months, it goes back into HMRC.
Right. So we've got a couple of people here on the call who, yes, definitely paying the levy, and some not.
Yeah. So those of you who are paying the levy, you may be employing apprentices already. You may be spending it. If you are, good on you, fantastic. But if you're not spending it, my advice to you is spend it, and spend it quickly, because if you don't spend it, it will go back to HMRC. But I'll tell you in a minute how you can spend it if you're supporting through apprentices currently. So that's the levy. Okay, as I said, it can only be used to fund apprenticeship training. Funding expires if it's not used after 24 months. However, for levy payers, you can actually transfer your unspent levy. So I think it's 25% of your unspent levy that you're now allowed to transfer out. So what that means is, as a levy paying organisation, you could support a smaller business in your local area by transferring some of your levy through to them to cover the cost of their apprenticeship training. Now, our hub, the Apprenticeship Skills Hub, we launched a project last July called Transfer to Transform, and we're doing exactly that. So I'm tapping into big levy paying organisations. For instance, I've got Surrey County Council on board, GlaxoSmithKline, Bupa, Lenovo. They've basically pledged to me a certain amount of their unspent levy. I've currently got just over £500,000 in levy pledges. When I talk to an SME, so for instance, if one of you guys who wants to bring somebody in on the solicitor training, it's £27,000. If that person is over 19, which they're likely to be, the government will fund 95% of that £27,000, but they will expect you as the employer to pick up the remaining 5%. Now, to save you that money, I will go to GlaxoSmithKline, for instance, and say, right, I've got this employer here. Can I have £27,000, please? Sorry, my dog's going crazy. Bear with me 1 second. I do apologise. I knew that would happen. I do apologise.
Don't worry.
There's a pigeon in the garden. So basically, I would go to GlaxoSmithKline and say, can I have £27,000 of your unspent levy, please, to support this level 7 solicitor apprentice? They'll come back and say, yes, sorted, and we've saved you money. But I'll explain a little bit more about that as we go along. But that's the apprenticeship levy. For non-levy paying employers, so this is for any employer who has 50 staff or less in their employ. So if you take on an apprentice, or if you upskill an apprentice who's currently in your business and they are between 16 and 18 years of age, whatever cost the apprenticeship standard is, so it could be £4,500 or it could be £27,000, the government will completely cover that training cost. Okay, only if they're 16 to 18 years of old. 18 years of age. So if you take somebody on, or you're going to upskill somebody who's 19 or above, this is where the government come into the co-funding. They will pay 95% of that cost, expecting you to pick up the remaining 5%. This is where our levy transfer comes in, though, because if we can get the levy transfer for you, it's not going to cost you anything. Okay, and we don't just go for the 5%, we go for the whole amount, so it covers everything. So we haven't even got to get it from the government. Non-levy paying employers with over 50 staff, no matter what age, you fall into co-funding. Okay, so it means that you still have to pay 5% of whatever, whether they're 16 to 18 or whether they're 19 years old. on the levy share opportunity, I mean, in the first instance, I would always say, come to me first, and I can see if I can find a levy payer that will cover the training cost for you. But there is also a central system on the Digital Account Service website where loads of organisations in the UK now who've got unspent levy put all of their details on a web page, and you can actually do a direct application to them to say, can I have some of your levy pot, please? And when we're talking about levy, transfer and money, no money is crossing hands with anybody here. How it works is you have to set up, no matter who you are, you have to set yourself up with an account. So it's called a Digital Apprenticeship Service account. It links you in with HMRC. Takes 5 minutes to set up. It's really easy to set up, and again, I can help anybody to do this if they need to help with it. So basically, it links you in with HMRC and the ESFA, the Education of Skills Funding Authority. So you get an account set up, and then you have to just read and agree to the agreement on there, and all the rules around the ESFA funding are listed in there about what you have to do to take on an apprentice, and you have to just ensure that you read all of the agreement and then approve it. Once that's set up, and you've gone away and you've decided you want an apprentice, we can advertise your apprenticeship vacancy through there, or you can let your training provider advertise it for you, or you've got somebody in place already. We have to go in and put them onto that particular system. This then links you in with all of the various funding streams, and it links you in with your training provider. Once you've got the apprentice on there, if you're not worried about levy transfer, or you're taking somebody who's under 18, you're going to get full funding, we can reserve funds through there from the government, okay? Or we can link in with a levy transfer company, and they just send link requests, and we just approve those. Only once the apprentice has started in training and we've got an approved training provider do we link them in with the training provider on this system. The funding stream then goes through the DAS account. So no money comes out of any accounts into your account and back out again. It all gets transferred through the DAS system. If at any point anybody stops, anybody leaves, we just press the stop button and everything stops. It's actually a really easy system to navigate and use. It's very quick, and when it works well, it works well. When it doesn't work, it's a nightmare.
Carol, fantastic. We have got 5 minutes left of your presentation time. So there was a question you just talked about, somebody leaving, and somebody's just said, what happens, is there a clawback if someone leaves in the middle of the training?
No, so basically what happens is the money's all paid, but the money comes out monthly. So the minute anyone stops, it stops straight away. I'll just mention very quickly, there's an incentive still available. It's £1,000 incentive, and it's for any employer who takes on a 16 to 18-year-old. That incentive is paid in 2 parts. You get £500 at 90 days and £500 at 365 days. If that apprentice leaves at 91 days and you've been paid out that £500, you've still got it because you've had them in employment for 90 days. You just don't get the rest.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I think the perception might be, I'll be interested to see what other people think, but the perception of the paperwork around apprenticeships might be very difficult. But I think hopefully everybody on the call can see that Carol is there to help you to unpick some of that and to help you with that. So if you've got questions, we've got, just as I say, 5 more minutes. So pop your questions in. Over to you, Carol.
I'll stop sharing my screen. And yeah, please fire away any questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I'll kick off with a question is around the types of apprenticeships. So if we are an employer, where's the first place we would look for that list of apprenticeships?
So there's a website called the Institute for Apprenticeships. If you just Google find an apprenticeship or Google Institute for Apprenticeships. The Institute is great. It's just got drop-down sections. You can tick the type of environment, and it will show you the actual standard that's in there. You have to make sure, though, that the standard matches the job role. So whatever the job role is covered in that standard.
Yeah. I mean, I looked up digital marketeers and things like that. They're on there. There's all sorts. So Emily says, hi, Emily says, do you have any examples of networks for apprentices and networks for employers employing apprentices? Well, before you answer, Carol, but I would just urge here on this call, to put your email addresses in. This is a great way. This is the first, network already. You've got people on this call who are already interested in this. So please connect.
Yeah. So Emily, on that one, so each area in the UK will have, so for instance, Surrey has ALPS, which is the Association of Learning Providers Surrey. Now that brings together all of the learning providers who deliver apprenticeships in Surrey. Now through ALPS and through ourselves, the hub, you'll find there's lots of different events that are running and network groups that go on. There aren't network groups as such for like apprenticeship employers, but we run things like levy payers networks, which are big levy paying employers. We get them all together. Fantastic. And then obviously there are events that are running that will link in employers with apprentices, etc.
That's great. Emily, remind us where you can unmute yourself. Remind us, where's your location?
So I'm based in Birmingham, but we're sort of an international law firm. So we've got offices in London and internationally.
Yeah. Okay.
So Emily, there will be apprenticeship and skills hubs. They're coming up all over the place nationally. If you drop me an email, I can probably link you in with contacts in your areas.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, if anyone's got any questions or needs any additional information, just drop me an email. I put my contact details in at the beginning of the chat, and then I can point you in the right direction. If I can help you, I'll step in. If not, I'll point you in the right direction of who can.
Fantastic. I'm just looking at, so Sharon says, I contacted Trailblazers to talk about creating an apprentice profile that they were looking for. As yet, had no response. Are there any other avenues? And I obviously pointed it towards you, Carol.
So what was it for, Sharon?
Yeah, hi. We are looking for a heavy plant machinery operator. So what we're looking in effect is that he'll be trained on all the heavy plant machinery we've got. So we're looking at 360s, forklifts, cherry pickers, road sweeper, all that kind of stuff. We've got the authorization from our end to take on an apprenticeships to do it. But I've contacted Trailblazers that are within the construction industry, but nothing's ever come back. No one's ever come back to me with it.
So are you looking for the trainer to deliver?
We can do the training on our side. That's absolutely fine. But we need, obviously, it needs to go through a college of some sort or some avenue so that we get that 20% because they need to come off, don't they?
Do you want to drop me an email, Sharon?
Done it. Already done it.
And I'll get back.
Thank you.
Okay.
Fantastic. Okay, so I don't see. Oh, hang on a minute. Just I think. Right. Yeah. So Paul and Emily have put their details on the chat. So if other people would like to connect, that would be absolutely fantastic. So all that really remains is for me to say a massive thank you, Carol. We've had Kickstarters at People Vision, and it's been amazing. So I know these government projects are great. I think once this apprenticeship thing gets more integrated, and it's brilliant to see the law firms here, because as I was saying last night, my kid goes to a fairly good school, and they were recommending very highly the opportunities for very bright kids. Not that I'm saying my kids are very bright, are they? But they are suggesting that kids, you don't have to just go down the university road. One of my friend's sons was with Land Rover Jag up in Leamington Spa doing a 7-year amazing apprenticeship. And they took him skiing, so that's got to be all right as an apprenticeship opportunity. But any final words from you, Carol?
No, I just wanted to say, if anyone's got any questions, need any support, please just drop me an email. Alison, thank you so much for the opportunity, though, because there's a lot of myths that need to be busted around apprenticeships, and the more employers we can get on board, the better. And if any of you levy payers, if you want to lose some of your levy transfer, let me know. I'm happy to spend it.
Fantastic. Well, listen, that's absolutely brilliant. It's been really lovely to hear you again, Carol. Very informative. I think, you know, there's some lovely comments. If anyone would be kind enough to stay behind and give us a little bit of a video testimonial, just to come on, just to record and say, thank you so much for the webinar. We would really appreciate that. So just stay on the line. But apart from that, thank you so much. Thanks so much, Carol.
Thanks, everybody.